Welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. Currently, we are in the letter of Romans, chapter 1, and so we're going to continue. And as we said, this is one of the most plain and simple teachings on salvation. When we go through this letter, you will have a full understanding and assurance of your salvation, that you will know that you know that you know that you are saved. And Paul is going to teach us from the legal side and from the vital side. You will know that you're saved. All right, so let's kind of jump to it. We did the introduction last time to the book of Romans, and we're going to pick it up with verse 8. And Paul says, "First, I thank my God through Jesus Christ for all of you, because of the news of your faith is being reported in all the world." Now, remember, I can't help but think that Paul would have loved to live in the times in which we live. Social media, the travel. I mean, he traveled. And remember, he spent years traveling, but he didn't travel as far as we would think. So, for example, for him, one of the reasons why he's going to say he never made it to Rome, from Jerusalem to Rome was quite a trip. It was quite a distance to travel. Uh, um, to travel. I'm going to get the distance here, but to travel um, from Rome, and then of course, remember, they had at best, if they went on boat, um, if they went on boat, um, if they let me see here, if they went on boat that was faster, but still, ruse. Here we go. I'm going to tell you this in a moment. Of course, it's here telling me in kilometers. I hate when they do this. All right. So from Jerusalem to Rome by boat, if I'm reading this right, is about 1,200 miles. Okay. Now, when you think about that distance, to, let's say, to walk, if it's on land, to walk, to travel, to travel on horseback or carriage, again, you're talking months. But if it's boat, it still would take a long time. All right. So, Paul, when he would have to write something, this is why a lot of times letters were important. He would write a letter and then kind of just send it. Hey, send it some of his favorite, not his favorite, faithful ministers. He would dictate it, they would write it, and then Paul would send it off. And they would travel. Like here, this letter was written, and then it was sent and delivered from Paul. Okay. But it is a testimony that when he says right here that your faith is being reported in all the world. Now, remember, Paul didn't start this church. So who started it? Well, there's a lot of contenders out there. And it seemed to have been a good church, because notice what Paul is saying, that your faith is being reported in all the world. Now, when he says the world, it usually means the Roman world, the Roman Empire, okay, which was vast, okay, vast, covered a lot of ground. And yet people are hearing about this faith. And so Paul, wherever he was, is here. He's, man, your faith is being reported. People are talking about your faith. And what a testimony to have. I think about sometimes like a church. If you think about a church and what a church is known for, and there are churches that can be known all around the world. But what are they known for? If I were to tell you the kind of church, what are they known for? And here he says, your faith is what's being reported on all the world. Verse 9, for God, whom I serve with my spirit and telling the good news about his son, is my witness that I constantly mention you, always asking in my prayers that if it is somehow in God's will, I may now at last succeed to coming to you. So right here, you're going to see this is the reason why Paul is writing this. Okay, this is the reason why he is writing this. Yeah, he's praying, Lord, can I come and see them? He said, for I want very much to see you, so I may impart to you some spiritual gifts to strengthen you, that is, to be mutually encouraged by each other's faith, both yours and mine. Now, notice Paul talked about spiritual gift, and Paul was certainly used by God, by the Holy Spirit, with certain spiritual gifts, and which we'll get into later, okay? And that was one of the marks of apostles, the apostles. They came empowered by God through the spiritual gifts. Um, so then, and again, I'm going to kind of get more into this because the question today is, are there spiritual gifts in operation today? And there's a big debate over that, okay? But anyway, the reason why Paul is saying that is that what? That I can impart spiritual gifts to what? Strengthen you. So that is always the purpose of the manifestation of the gifts of the Spirit. And so then verse 12, that is to be mutually encouraged by each other's faith, both yours and mine. Verse 13. Now I want you to know, brothers, that I often planned to come to you, but was prevented until now, in order I may have a fruitful ministry among you, just as among the rest of the Gentiles. And we're going to see this term Gentiles juxtaposed to Jews. Remember, the church starts off Jewish. It starts off in Jerusalem. Jesus preached around Israel, both in Judea, which is the southern part of Israel, and then Galilee, the northern part. Jesus was raised in the northern part, Capernaum, Nazareth. He was raised in Nazareth, and then when he became an adult, he moved to Capernaum. And then, and for as Jerusalem, when you think about the book of Acts, the church starts in Jerusalem, and then it spreads. Now, the Gentile is simply a non-Jew. The rest of the Gentiles, meaning non-Jews, says, I am obligated both to Greeks and barbarians. And the word barbarians here is simply kind of non-Greek speaking people. And then their speech may not be as refined as the Greek language, but barbarians. And then he says, both to the wise and to the foolish. He says, so I'm eager to preach the good news to you who are also in Rome. So again, he is showing that he at this point, it even seems like he's never even been to Rome, let alone to really see this church. But he says, hey, I'm heading there. I'm heading to see this great church in Rome. Verse 16, for I am not ashamed of the gospel, because it is God's power for salvation to everyone who believes, first to the Jew and also to the Greek. For in it God's righteousness is revealed from faith to faith, just as it is written, the righteous will live by faith. Now, this phrase, the righteous will live by faith, we see it in Joel or Habakkuk. Hold on, let me tell you. I can probably tell you in just a moment. But it appears, Habakkuk, okay? It appears like 4 times in the scriptures. So Habakkuk here in Romans, in Galatians, and then I think also in Hebrews. The righteous shall live by faith, okay? The righteous will live by faith. This and uh, the idea of what is now faith as it is used. The word faith and then the word believe, it's interchangeable. One is a noun and one is the verb. Faith is the noun, and then to believe is the verb. The righteous shall live by what? Faith. What faith is it? Well, we're going to get into that. We're going to break this down. What is the faith? What is faith? The gospel, and you having faith in it. Now, he goes on, and Paul says, but I'm not ashamed of the gospel because what? It is God's power for salvation to everyone who believes. So it is God's power for salvation to everyone who believes, the Jew first and also to the Greek. Verse 18, now this is a very interesting kind of verse here, or passage, that is, I think, misused in a lot of ways. Verse 18 says, for God's wrath is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of people who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. So now he shifts from the glorious salvation. The righteous shall live by faith. Why? Because God's wrath is revealed from heaven against all, from godlessness. I read that wrong originally. For God's wrath is revealed from heaven against all godlessness and unrighteousness of people who by their unrighteous suppress the truth. And that's the status of people. You will see that people will try to say that God is unfair because he's sending people to hell. This is the reason why he is sending people to hell. And notice this term, they suppress the truth. It's not that people are ignorant. It's not that people don't know and won't have a chance to ever hear the gospel. They suppress the truth. Verse 19, since what can be known about God is evident among them because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, that is, his eternal power and divine nature, has been clearly seen since the creation of the world, being understood through what he has made. As a result, people are without excuse. Now think about this for a moment, that God has displayed his wisdom, his attributes. When you look at the world, the creation, the universe, and your conclusion, a Big Bang. Your conclusion is give it 14 billion years and it'll produce this work, this life, the complexity of life. That's what he's saying right here. You can look at it. It will spark a question, the glory of this. And what should be that as we progress in our ability to see further into the universe, it should spark more questions, and yet it doesn't. They get hardened, and that's what Paul is going to reveal here. That they can look at that, like I say, they can look at that and they can say, well, anything but God. Let's come up with evolution, let's come up with all kinds of stuff, but anything, God didn't do that. Okay? So people are without excuse. So people may go, well, what about those people out in the, what about those people way out in the, the hidden tribes, Amazon, 5,000, 5,000 miles up in the mountains that they never seen and heard the gospel. They have creation. And here is the interesting thing too. So if you go and you discover these primal tribes, where did they come up with these pagan religions? Well, why would you come up with that, a pagan religion, a pagan God, as opposed to the one and true God? Okay? He says, for though they knew God, now he's talking about the Gentiles here, they did not glorify him as God, but show gratitude. Instead, their thinking became nonsense, and their senseless minds were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools. They exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man, birds, four-footed animals, and reptiles. So instead of being wise, he said they became fools. So you see kind of the pagan, which is really represented in the pagan religion. So then he says, therefore God delivered them over to the cravings of their hearts, to sexual impurity, so that their bodies were degraded among themselves. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worship and serve something created instead of Creator, who is praised forever. So again, notice you said God delivered them over. Sexual perversion. By the way, do you realize most pagan religions have some kind of pagan sexual perversion in it? Verse 26, this is why God delivered them over to degrading passions, for even their females exchanged natural sexual relations for unnatural ones. And the males in the same way also left natural relations with females and were inflamed in their lust for one another, males committing shameless acts with males and receiving in their own persons the appropriate penalty for their error. Now, without a doubt, this is one of the clearest um, denunciation of the gay lifestyle. It's not the only one. We're going to get to that in a moment. But clearly, he is talking about, hey, that the gay lifestyle, the LGBT, is not compatible with creation. That's not what God created. Now, I'm going to also say, I'm not going to get into an argument or like there's some people that like to get into an argument here over, they focus on the homosexuals, and that's wrong. Paul mentions it here, but this is probably the only time Paul mentions it in all of his 13 letters, this particular incident. But he's not finished. Let's go on and finish what he says. He said that because they did not think it worthwhile to acknowledge God, God delivers them over to a worthless mind to do what is morally wrong. They were filled with all unrighteousness, evil, greed, and wickedness. They are full of envy. Now, watch what God condemns. Right, okay? And because they did not think, watch this, and because they did not think it worthwhile to acknowledge God, God delivers them over to a worthless mind. Now, in the King James, it says, I think it says a reprobate, but anyway, to do worthless mind to do what is morally wrong. Watch this. They are filled with all unrighteousness, evil, greed, and wickedness. They are full, right, of envy, murder, quarrel, deceit, and malice. They are gossips, slanderers, God haters, arrogant, proud, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, undiscerning, untrustworthy, unloving, unmerciful. Although they know full well God's just sentence that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them, but they even applaud others who practice them. Now, so that's why today, if you're going to talk and point out the sins of homosexuality, you also got to do this. And this is where the biggest problems with Christianity today is, because they talk about, the homosexual part without talking about this, where he equally talks about how debased these actions are. They're just as bad. They're just as debased. And as Christians, I think one of the biggest problems is that we like to feel good about ourselves by only talking about, oh, let's talk about the gays, but you're not going to talk about all that other stuff. Because guess what? The church is full of those other activities, full of those sins. They're full of it. And we want to focus just on one. Focus on all of it. And the idea even is not even to go out and then understand this. This is why we preach the gospel. because of all of that. All right, guys, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below.